Staff Sergeant Rena Cole had built her name the hard way, one near-impossible shot after another. At 31, with a face and frame that drew no attention, she could vanish into any crowd, making her the military's quiet solution for problems brute force couldn't fix. When intel confirmed that a deadly female sniper unit, 5 women trained specifically to terrorize coalition troops, had stacked up 89 confirmed kills in barely 6 weeks, Command made a move they'd attempted only twice before. They called in Rena. Those enemy shooters were phantoms, ruthless and invisible, their tactics outsmarting every known counter-sniper playbook. But as they plotted their next ambush, none of them realized that someone had already locked onto them, analyzing their habits, learning their rhythm. And unlike anyone they had ever faced, this hunter understood their mindset because she'd been molded by the same discipline. What was coming would be personal. A duel between the world's deadliest women on a battlefield where a second place didn't exist. Inside the briefing room at Forward Operating Base Granite, bad news was standard, but the look on the intel officer's face promised something even worse. Major Liam Ortega stood at the head of the room, a digital map glowing behind him, its red markers tracing a pattern of cold precision and loss. "Gentlemen, and Sergeant Cole, what you're about to hear is top secret," he said. 6 weeks ago, we began losing personnel to sniper fire at a rate that's off the charts. These weren't random pot shots from insurgents, but deliberate surgical kills from extreme distance, done by pros. Ortega advanced the slide, revealing a grainy image of 5 women in combat gear. "Intelligence has confirmed the threat," he continued. "An all-female enemy sniper team, hand-picked and trained by their intelligence directorate. They're not locals. They're seasoned soldiers deployed here for one purpose: to dismantle coalition forces." Captain Mason Holt, seated near the end of the table, broke the silence. "Female snipers? Are we sure?" "Absolutely," Ortega replied. "The enemy realized women can maneuver here with fewer restrictions, blend among civilians, and occupy vantage points that wouldn't raise alarms for male fighters. They scouted competitors, hunters, former soldiers, anyone with shooting pedigree, and pushed them through elite sniper conditioning. The outcome was catastrophic." Ortega tapped to the next map. Dozens of casualty icons filled the screen. "In 6 weeks, they've confirmed 89 kills," he said grimly. "They work in pairs or as a full team, depending on the objective. Their engagement ranges run 800 to 1,200 meters. By the time we find their nest, they're gone. Never more than 24 hours in one spot, and their tempo's only rising. Last week, they took out a convoy commander and 2 security men in a coordinated strike that lasted under 90 seconds, and the room fell silent as officers absorbed what that meant. A sniper team that skilled, that agile, and that effective would only become a larger threat if left unchecked. "Traditional counter-sniper tactics have failed," Major Liam Ortega continued. "These women know our procedures, our response patterns, and our search routines. They stay a step ahead because they think differently from the male snipers we usually track." Captain Mason Holt asked the obvious, "So, what's the solution?" Ortega glanced at Rena, who had been sitting quietly at the back taking notes and studying their movement. "The solution is Sergeant Rena Cole," he said. "She's the only counter-sniper we have who's successfully taken down a female enemy sniper team before. That was 18 months ago in a different theater against a different enemy, but the methods were similar. She understands their trade because she thinks the same way." Every eye turned to Rena. She was 31 but could pass for younger or older as needed. Her look was intentionally plain, medium height, average build, the kind of person who disappears into a crowd. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. her brown eyes calm and unreadable. She'd learned long ago that being underestimated was an advantage. Let them question whether she was as capable as her file claimed, she thought. The proof would come when it mattered. Ortega continued. Sergeant Cole has 73 confirmed kills across 8 years as a military sniper. 41 of those were enemy combatants who never even knew she was there. She's completed 13 counter-sniper missions with a 100% success rate, and she's the only operator in our forces trained specifically to hunt the hunters. What's the plan? Another officer asked. Rena spoke for the first time, her voice low but carrying the authority of absolute confidence. I study their patterns until I can predict where they'll be next. Then I get there first and wait. When they arrive to set up their shot, they become my target instead. It's simple. I become the trap they walk into. They're professionals, Mason Holt said. They won't make it easy. I don't need easy, Rena replied. I need predictable. Every sniper has habits, favored ranges, go-to positions, routines they don't even notice. I'll find those patterns and then they stop being hunters and become targets. Ortega opened the detailed intel files. The enemy team has 5 members, and we've identified 3 of them through intercepted communications and surveillance. The leader goes by Lynx, her true name unknown, and she's credited with at least 25 of the team's confirmed kills. Then there are Rogue and Echo, each with about 15 confirmed strikes. The remaining 2 operatives remain unidentified, their presence inferred only from operational rhythms that point to a 5-person rotation. Rena studied the surveillance photos closely. The 3 identified shooters looked to be in their 20s to early 30s, fit and lean, and intelligence notes indicated many came from competitive shooting backgrounds before recruitment. Lynx seemed older and more seasoned than the others, her confidence readable even in grainy imagery. What's their next likely target? Rena asked. Major Liam Ortega tapped the map to highlight a route. The supply convoy road from FOB Granite to FOB Falcon, roughly 40 kilometers. It's the most exposed stretch in our sector, and they've struck it twice already. Intel says they're likely to hit it again within 72 hours. Then that's where I'll be, Rena said flatly. I'll need complete operational freedom. No radio checks they can intercept, no backup teams that might betray my position, and no overhead assets that tip them off to surveillance. I work alone, and I work quietly. When it's done, I'll report in. Captain Mason Holt looked doubtful. You're going after 5 trained snipers alone? That's suicide. Rena met his stare with the kind of look people who'd seen war wear carry. Steady, unreadable. I've done this before, she replied. The mistake is assuming 5 against 1 favors the 5. In sniper work, numbers don't matter. Position, patience, and precision do. I'll have those 3 advantages because they won't know they're being hunted until it's too late. Major Ortega nodded. Sergeant Rena Cole has full operational authority, he said. All support assets are available, but she'll determine if and when to use them. Gentlemen, let the professional do her job. The briefing broke up, and Rena went back to her quarters to lay out gear with the same methodical precision that had kept her alive through 8 years of the most dangerous job in the military. Her primary rifle was an M2010 enhanced sniper system, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum with a practical effective envelope out to about 1,200 meters. She'd pushed that platform to hits at 1,400 meters by combining flawless fundamentals with careful environmental calculation. As a backup, she carried a Mark 12 special purpose rifle. Lighter, more mobile, better for closer work if things turned into a running fight. Her kit included variable power optics, a spotting scope, rangefinder, ballistic calculator, and night vision for low-light operations. She packed a rangefinder, ballistic computer, environmental sensors, and comms gear she hoped would stay unused. But the real edge wasn't the kit. It was the hard-earned knowledge stacked from hundreds of missions. Rena knew how other snipers thought because she had been one of them. She understood their routines, tastes, and the mistakes they made. Even elite shooters fall into patterns, and patterns were weaknesses. Over the next 24 hours, Rena tore through every scrap of intel on the enemy team. She rechecked their past kills for rhythms and timing, location, shot choice, and withdrawal routes, and she sketched a psychological profile for each identified shooter based on style. Lynx, the leader, favored extreme-range engagements between 900 and 1,200 meters. That showed skill and confidence, but also meant she needed particular terrain to make those shots, a patient hunter waiting for perfection. Rogue preferred medium ranges, roughly 600 to 800 meters, and favored moving targets, which demanded a different set of tactics and a willingness to take riskier shots. Echo handled close work, 400 to 600 meters, focusing on fast follow-ups and often providing security for the others by engaging opportunistic threats while teammates lined up the primary shots. The two unknowns remained blanks on the sheet, but their existence created a 5-person rotation that let the team operate continuously without burning out, professional, disciplined, and dangerous. Rena picked out the supply route's weakest point, a 2-kilometer exposure between two ridgelines that made any convoy visible from elevated positions along either side. The enemy had struck that spot twice already from the northern ridge. Everyone expected them to pick a new position next time, but Rena saw what others missed. The northern ridge offered superior sight lines, clean escape routes, and natural concealment that made it ideal. Good snipers go back to what works. Pride, or sheer confidence in their skill, would make them assume they could reuse it and stay hidden. So she emplaced herself on the northern ridgeline 36 hours before the convoy, found a hide covering the 3 likeliest shooter positions, masked it from air and ground observation, and settled in to wait. Waiting separates the pros from the amateurs. Amateurs get bored, fidget, and make mistakes, while professionals accept that waiting is the job. Pulling the trigger is merely the end point of hours or days of perfect patience. Rena sat without moving for 42 hours, breaking position only under cover of darkness to relieve herself, eating cold rations, sipping water sparingly, and keeping absolute discipline. She watched the ridgeline through her optics, cataloging every rock, bush, and shifting shadow, and just after dawn on convoy day she spotted movement. 2 women about 800 meters out, moving with the deliberate efficiency of trained operators. They wore local civilian clothing layered over tactical kit to mask themselves at distance, and carried what looked like Dragunov rifles, standard-issue enemy precision arms. Rena watched through her scope as they set up a firing position overlooking the supply route. It was a professional setup, 1 shooter, 1 spotter, both scanning for the approaching convoy, but her instincts, sharpened by years of counter-sniper work, told her it was too obvious. 2 snipers in a visible position while 3 others were nowhere to be seen felt like bait. She widened her scan across the ridge and found another position at about 1,100 meters, nearly at the edge of her effective range. Movement so slight she almost missed it until it resolved into 2 more operators preparing an overwatch. The tactical picture snapped into focus. The obvious pair were decoys intended to draw return fire, while the real kill team sat in overwatch ready to finish anyone who exposed themselves. It was clever, professional, and exactly the method that had kept them alive for weeks, but Rena had seen it before. The trick was spotting which site was the trap and which was the true threat. She chose the overwatch as priority. Take out the real danger first, then handle the decoys. The problem was distance. At 1,100 meters, she was pushing her rifle to the limit. Wind, temperature, humidity, elevation, every environmental variable would change the bullet's path, so she needed flawless calculations and flawless execution. Rena spent the next 20 minutes tracking wind shifts, measuring range with her laser, and feeding data into her ballistic solver. The wind proved fickle, shifting at different distances and swirling around ridgeline features, so she watched plants for patterns in movement. She scanned dust clouds for subtle cues about direction and speed, and assembled a full environmental picture to compensate for everything that could affect the round. The convoy rolled onto the road below. 3 vehicles moving at normal pace, unaware of the danger above. The visible pair of snipers readied their positions, one shouldering the rifle while the other ranged and called shots, but Rena ignored them and kept her focus on the overwatch where the real killers sat. Through her glass, she could pick out 2 women in tight concealment, one behind the scope and the other scanning with binoculars. The shooter was aiming not at the convoy but at the ridgeline sector where a counter-sniper would likely appear. Rena ran her final calculations, accounted for every factor, and settled her breathing into the natural pause where she was steadiest. She placed the crosshair on the overwatch sniper's center of mass, held for distance and wind, and squeezed. The M2010 barked, and the recoil folded into her position as the .300 Winchester Magnum round punched through 1,100 meters of mountain air. Before the spotter could react, she worked the bolt, fed another round, and fired again. The spotter crumpled beside her partner. 2 down, 3 left. The decoy pair moved with professional speed, abandoning their post and seeking cover the instant they realized they were being hunted. They understood immediately that a counter-sniper with extreme range capability had shown up on the ridgeline. Rena didn't chase. Pursuing snipers is how you get killed. They would lead a pursuer into prepared traps, ambushes, or terrain where local knowledge mattered. Instead, she watched. Trained snipers under pressure don't panic. They execute doctrine, moving to pre-planned fallback points or rally sites. If she could predict those points, she could intercept them. She tracked the 2 visible shooters moving through cover, watching how they used terrain to mask their withdrawal. They were heading east toward a canyon network with multiple escape options, but their movement suggested a specific destination rather than random flight. That implied a planned rally point where the team would regroup after a failed ambush. She moved parallel to their route, concealed and deliberate, using the terrain familiarity she'd gained during 42 hours of observation. She knew this ridge intimately now, every hollow, every rock, every sight line. 20 minutes of careful movement brought her to an overlook above a small canyon junction where 3 routes converged. If that was their rally point, they'd have to pass through it. So she set up a hasty firing position and waited. Patience. 15 minutes later, she saw movement. The 2 decoy shooters sweeping the canyon cautiously, weapons up and scanning for threats. They moved like professionals, checking corners and covering each other with solid infantry technique, but they were watching ground-level ambushes and not someone on the ridge above. Rena picked up the lead target as it entered the junction, range 450 meters, downhill angle, moderate wind, an easier shot than the 1,100-meter kill that began the engagement. She fired, and the lead sniper dropped instantly. The second reacted fast, diving behind rocks and immediately searching for the shooter. Well concealed and weapon-ready, that second shooter showed better tactical sense than her partner. Rena recognized the behavior, and this was likely Rogue, the aggressive, medium-range specialist who'd survived weeks through skill and instinct. And she didn't take the immediate follow-up. Rogue was in solid cover and could return fire the moment she pinpointed a position. Forcing that shot would have blown Rena's hide and created a duel at ranges where Rogue excelled, so Rena waited, trusting that time pressure would force movement. The reports of Rena's shots would draw coalition forces to the area. Rogue couldn't stay pinned forever. After 12 minutes of total stillness, Rogue sprinted from cover toward a canyon exit and the escape routes beyond, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Rena had anticipated the route during observation and already had her rifle trained on the crossing point. When Rogue crossed the killing zone, Rena fired. The shot was rushed by her standards, but at 450 meters against a moving target in open ground, her training made it routine. Rogue went down, 4 confirmed. 1 enemy remained. Lynx, the leader credited with 25 kills who'd run the operation for 6 weeks. Rena's radio crackled, the first message since she began. "Cole, this is Granite Command. We're observing your engagement. Confirm." 4 enemy snipers neutralized, she replied. "Confirmed." 1 remains active. Identity? They asked. "Lynx, team leader," came the response. "She's gone to ground somewhere on the ridgeline." "I'm hunting." "Copy. Do you need support?" came the voice through the radio. "Negative," Rena replied calmly. "Any support assets would tip her off to my position. I need her to believe she's hunting me, not the other way around. Cole out." She knew Lynx would already grasp the tactical reality. Her entire unit gone, wiped out by a lone counter-sniper who'd proven equal in range, discipline, and patience. That left Lynx with 2 choices: vanish or fight. Rena wagered on pride. Real snipers don't run, they adapt and find a way to win. Over the next 6 hours, Rena carried out the most meticulous hunt of her career, moving slow through the ridgeline, checking every spot a skilled marksman might use, searching for any hint of Lynx's presence. It turned into a chess match across kilometers of broken mountain. She'd set up in positions that gave her overlapping sight lines into likely hides, waiting for Lynx to reveal herself. And when nothing stirred, she'd reposition and repeat. As daylight faded, she finally found it. Fresh soil disturbed near a rock formation with commanding views of where Rena had killed the others. Someone had been there recently, watching, analyzing. Lynx wasn't fleeing. She was studying Rena's moves, learning her rhythm, preparing to flip the hunt. The stalk had become mutual. Rena dug into a covered position with multiple angles of fire and braced for a long night. She knew Lynx would shift after dark, using night optics to her advantage, but Rena had her own, and something more valuable: insight into how Lynx thought. 6 weeks of flawless success had made Lynx confident, too confident. Losing 4 teammates and still staying in the fight meant she believed she could finish it. That confidence would kill her. Around 200 hours, Rena spotted faint movement on thermal, 700 meters out, creeping toward a location with a clear line to her sector. Lynx was doing exactly what Rena would have done, flanking for a better angle. Rena could shoot now, but at that distance and in the dark, relying on thermal alone, it wasn't a guaranteed hit. Better to let Lynx commit, let her settle in and get comfortable, then end it clean. Rena watched through her night vision as Lynx built her shooting platform, deliberate and quiet, clearly preparing for a long observation on Rena's suspected hide. When she stopped moving and began scanning through her scope, Rena knew she had the shot. Range, 680 meters. Wind, minimal. Temperature, cold but steady. Elevation, slight upward angle. Target, stationary, scanning in the wrong direction. Rena steadied her breathing, found the natural pause between heartbeats, adjusted for every environmental variable, and took the shot. Through her night vision, she watched Lynx crumple. 5 for 5. The enemy sniper unit was finished. Rena keyed her radio. "Granite Command, this is Cole. All 5 enemy snipers neutralized. Area secure. Requesting extraction at my coordinates." "Copy that, Cole," came the reply. "Extraction inbound. Outstanding work." 40 minutes later, a helicopter lifted her from the ridgeline. She carried proof, photos, IDs, confirmation that the threat was gone. Back at FOB Granite, Major Liam Ortega met her at the landing zone. 5 for 5 in 72 hours, he said. "That's the most successful counter-sniper op we've ever logged in this sector." Rena gave a small shrug. "They were skilled, but they built patterns. Everyone does eventually. Once I found those, it was just execution." Ortega smiled faintly. "You make it sound simple." "Sniper work is simple," she replied. "Be in the right place at the right time, wait with absolute patience, and take the shot when it counts. The hard part is maintaining perfect discipline when your life depends on it." Captain Mason Holt, the same man who'd doubted her earlier, stepped forward. "Sergeant Cole, I owe you an apology. I didn't think one operator could pull this off." Her expression didn't change. "Numbers don't matter in this work. 5 snipers in 5 positions mean 5 problems. You solve them one at a time. That's how you handle complexity. People assume 5 against 1 favors the 5. In truth, it just gives the 1-5 chances to prove what she can do." In the days that followed, intel confirmed the scale of her success. The enemy's entire female sniper initiative in the region was gone. Those 5 had been their elite, their pride, and losing them hit morale harder than any strike ever could. For Rena, it was just another mission closed out. She filed her after-action reports, cleaned her rifles, and readied herself for whatever came next. 2 weeks later, she was summoned to Major Liam Ortega's office. "Sergeant Cole, I've got another situation, different region, similar problem," he said. "Enemy sniper team operating with extreme effectiveness. This time it's 3 male snipers with a combined 60-plus confirmed kills. Command wants to know if you're available." Rena took the mission brief Ortega handed her and began the work she always did first. Study the kill patterns, the tactical approach, the likely areas of operation, and build a mental profile of how these shooters thought, where they'd most likely set up next, and what their habits revealed about their training and psychology. "When do I leave?" she asked. 72 hours. Is that enough?" Ortega offered. "I need 48 to study patterns, 12 to position, and 12 to execute. 3 snipers, 3 problems, 3 solutions. By this time next week that threat will be gone." Ortega smiled faintly. Most operators would at least hesitate at hunting 3 trained snipers solo. Rena met his gaze with the same calm certainty that had made her the service's go-to counter-sniper. "Most operators aren't trained to hunt hunters. I am. These shooters are deadly to anyone who doesn't know they're being hunted. But I will know where they are, how they operate, and I'll be waiting in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. To everyone else, they're dangerous. To me, they're just targets who haven't realized they're targets yet." She picked up the file and walked out, already mapping their patterns in her head, already planning her approach, already becoming the trap they'd walk into. That was what Rena Cole did. She hunted the hunters, took down the eliminators, and made the deadliest snipers wish they'd chosen another line of work. As she crossed the base toward her quarters, soldiers stepped aside not out of protocol but out of respect for reputation. Word had spread that she'd neutralized 5 enemy snipers in 72 hours, ending a 6-week campaign of terror with patience, precision, and the cold calculation that separates true professionals from pretenders. A new private asked his sergeant who she was. The sergeant's answer was simple. "That's Cole. She's the one they call when snipers need killing." The enemy sent 5 of their best after us. She went out alone and came back with all 5 confirmed. The scary part? She made it look routine, like hunting the world's deadliest shooters was just another day at work. Reyna reached her quarters and methodically began preparing for the next mission. 3 enemy snipers, 60-plus kills between them, operating in terrain she'd never seen. To most people it would look impossible, but to her it was math. 3 problems, 3 solutions. To Reyna it was just numbers. 3 problems, 3 solutions, and 72 hours to execute. She'd tackled harder missions with worse intel. The truth about hunting hunters was simple. Everyone had patterns. Everyone made mistakes, and eventually everyone met someone better. The enemy's female snipers had seemed unstoppable until they crossed paths with someone who understood that being the best meant never assuming you were. It meant treating every mission as if your life depended on perfect execution, because it did. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Major Tom's Tales for more incredible missions and untold stories from the field.